Thank you very much, Speaker, President, and the Deputy President. You are not in my speech, Deputy President. I see you, so I'm including you in the speech. The 2021 local government elections have now scientifically demonstrated through the elections that less than 50% of the people of South Africa have confidence in the former liberation movement, which has been in power since 1994. Our people have been patient with the former liberation movement for more than 27 years, gave you the majority mandate to govern society with the hope and belief that you will defeat poverty through development of economy, creation of jobs, reductions of inequalities. It is evident now that despite the confidence given to the former liberation movement for more than 27 years, government has been unable to defeat poverty, failed to grow the economy, and dismally failing to create jobs. South Africa has the highest level of joblessness in the world, and there is no believable program and plan to create jobs for our people. More than 10 million South Africans who are capable of working and are willing to work and not find jobs anywhere. And these are black people who are systematically excluded from meaningful economic participation under colonialism and apartheid. When political apartheid ended in 1994, our people had hope that majority black government will use their capacity of the state to develop productive forces, redistribute wealth, and create quality sustainable jobs for all. When faced with the question of the wide poverty problem and crisis, the apartheid government used the state and government to create opportunities for their own people and almost completely eradicated joblessness and poverty amongst white people. Today, they say government can't create jobs, it must be a private sector. But we know that during apartheid, they established state-owned institutions with an aim and a purpose of employing white people, particularly the illiterate Afrikaners. The post-1994 government has served to entrench this colonial and apartheid reality of making white people richer and black people poorer. The poverty and the joblessness of black people is getting worse under the current administration, with more than 1.7 million people who were previously employed losing jobs, and majority, if not all of these jobs, were lost in the private sector, which we are told it can create jobs. Despite this basic and verifiable reality and statistic, a president of a former liberation movement comes here to say that government does not create jobs and the hopeless people of our people must wait for private sector to create jobs for them. Sending our people to the private sector for jobs is like sending a cattle for slaughter. What we know about the private capitalist sector is that its purpose has never been and will never be about creation of jobs. The purpose of a capitalist industry to exist is not for jobs purposes. The purpose and sole purpose of capitalism and the private sector is to make profit. That is why private companies always adopt new technologies that seeks to replace workers with machines. That is why the private companies always force government to weaken labor protection laws, because they want to super exploit workers and pay them low and no wages without consequences. That is why private companies always prefer to employ undocumented immigrants, because they force them to work for longer hours and pay them almost nothing. That is why private companies are willing to destroy the environment, dirty our rivers and pollute the environment as long as they can make profit. That is why private companies use private armies, security companies, and even police to shoot and kill workers who demand higher wages. Workers who were demanding higher wages in Marikana were killed by the ANC government, and the sole purpose was to protect private companies' right to maximize profit. That is why all major capitalist corporations, particularly in the mining sector, are involved in tax avoidance and illicit financial flows, because they want to shift their profits to countries with low or no taxes at all. There is no private capitalist corporation that has as its primary objective the purpose of creating jobs. They are all obsessed with profits at the expense of our people. Despite all this, a president comes here to say our people must go to the private sector for jobs. What is evident is all these things is that the former liberation movement has now officially admitted to what we said when we launched the EFF in 2013, that the former liberation movement is incapable of and will not transform political power into economic power. Kwame Nkrumah was always correct that political power without economic power is meaningless. The former liberation movement has admitted that it will not use its political power to develop the productive forces and create jobs for our people. It is also historically and very incorrect to suggest that the sole role of government and the state is to create conditions for the private sector to create jobs. The history of capitalism, whether private or state capitalism, whether in the West or East, has demonstrated that the state always plays a direct role in the creation and protection of jobs. Let us perhaps give practical examples. China is the fastest growing economy in the world. South Africa and Africa's biggest trading partner has a significant state-owned sector of the economy that led to economic expansion, built infrastructure, and created millions of jobs. The Great Corporation of China, established in 2002, is a state-owned and employs more than 1.5 million people. China National Petroleum Corporation is a state-owned and employs close to 500,000 people. Emirates Airline, which is state-owned, employs more than 100,000 people. So these are many other examples that we can always give where the state plays a significant role and create jobs. State Bank of India, which is owned by the government of India, employs almost 250,000 people. So the story that government cannot create jobs is neither here nor there. There are many other examples we can give you that demonstrate that the most rapid development of the productive forces happens under the state leadership and guidance. We are giving the real examples of these countries in BRICS bloc because these are important strategic partners to South Africa and the entire African continent historically, now and in the future. You never said anything about BRICS, actually never gave any noteworthy analysis of the global balance of forces as if South Africa exists in isolation. We've never had a president of a country who conclude a speech without giving an analysis of the globe and the politics thereof. What we want to caution you through, though, in that none of the countries in the G7, the colonial and imperialist forces you find comfort with, are genuine friends of South Africa and African continent. We define South Africa and the entire African continent to these Western imperialist countries, particularly in the G7, as neo-colonialism. These countries have for centuries pillaged and raped the African continent and robbed us of our resources, and any person who believes that there can ever be a developmental relationship between Africa and the West is either a fool or something else. The only engagement that African continent can and must have with these imperialist forces is to stop them from stealing our minerals. We as Parliament and all progressive forces must work towards strengthening our politics, social, economic relationship with progressive forces, particularly China and Russia. We must not be apologetic about that. These countries openly associated with the struggle against colonialism and apartheid, and they will never shortchange us for material gains. Mr. President, you must admit that under your leadership, South Africa is in worse condition than it has ever been. You are currently the worst president to have ever occupied that position, and you are the worst president that has ever occurred to black people, and we are not surprised that black people are getting poorer under your leadership. There is no successful black businessman who was thriving before you became president who can claim that he's still thriving under your leadership. All those BEE deals which were sealed before you came in, they were terminated by white capital because they said they no longer need BEE partners. They've got you you will protect them. Everyone who supported you, every business person, black business person who donated money into the CR17 and campaign, today says a different story because you have abandoned all of them for your own white monopoly capital. Under your leadership, we have the highest level of poverty and suffering of black people, the highest level of unemployment, the most disorganized and compromised security sector, the most frequently electricity cuts and load shedding, high levels of corruption, parliament banned under your leadership of government, and not because it was banned by a homeless person, but due to negligence, dysfunctional public health care system and infrastructure. Our education infrastructure is still incomplete, and children still go to mud schools and use pit toilets. Neglect of the sports, arts and culture sector, which you never said anything about during SONA. You never ever said, not even a word about sports, arts and culture. And that shows that you have no regard for all those young people who are involved in these activities. High levels of crime, dismal failure of the state criminal justice system to decisively deal with gender-based violence and femicide. Local government, particularly in rural areas, is dysfunctional, with more than 128 municipalities in financial distress. Under your tenure as president, the situation in South Africa has gone from bad to worse. The fact of the matter is, Mr. President, your dream of being a president has come true. Please, now that you have fulfilled your dream of wanting to become a president, why are you not leaving us in peace? Because the highest ambition you ever held was to become a president. You have become a president. Now you want to come and serve for a second term. To do what? Because you are not doing anything. You are just on top but doing nothing. What began as a so-called new dawn has become massive unemployment, increased violence against women and children, collapsing hospitals, and the greatest threats against the security of the state in the post-democratic South Africa. The state-owned enterprises have all collapsed under Jamnandas, but you can't do anything because you are very scared of Jamnandas, who played a central role in raising funds for CR17. You are forever indebted to him, even when he's not performing well. Imagine ministers are being called here by your friends that they must resign, but they don't call the name of Jamnandas because he's their friend. He's not failing them in ensuring that they discriminate against our African brothers. We want you not to surrender this country to the Ruperts.
Honorable Member.
Mr. Jamnandas. What began as a so-called new dawn has become a massive unemployment, increased violence against women and children, collapsing hospitals, the greatest threat against the security of the state in post-democratic South Africa. When you assumed office, we want you, in the same way we want your predecessor, that the people of this country have not elected you to act in the interest of a small elite. We want you not to surrender this country to the Ruperts and the Oppenheimers, who played a vital role in funding your lifelong dream of being a president of this country. Unfortunately, you did not listen to this warning and became a shapeless individual whose term was an important concoction of special envoys, presidential task teams and summits. You wasted 5 years setting up structures in which you placed your friends from the business sector to resolve political problems. You did this because you mistook government to be the same as running a company. As a result, our people's suffering intensified while you sat and waited for capital to rescue the situation. You now want to auction off the country to the highest bidder by privatization of state-owned companies, and we all know who will buy state-owned assets. The white minority capitalist class that is at the core of your leadership of our people. We reject all forms of privatization that you plan to embark on, and we will go to the streets to reject any form of privatization. We gave you an opportunity to reclaim the land through our proposed amendment of Section 25 of the Constitution, and you hijacked our motion, distorted it, and asked us to only expropriate abandoned and rotten land. We rejected that with contempt. What do we do with rotten land? What are we going to do with a rotten land which is not productive? We want land that is prime. We want land that is of value to our people. There is absolutely nothing that you have done for black people. You seem to think that each State of the Nation address is the beginning of a new term as president, which is why there is no consistency and implementation of your own objectives. We will today take you through the mess you presided over and your many unfulfilled promises. In 2019, you claimed that you plan to ignite economic activity, restore investor confidence, support employment, and address the urgent challenges that affect the lives of vulnerable members of our society. Since then, you have been in charge for 15 financial year quarters, of which 8 had negative growth with technical recession in the process. From the last State of the Nation address in 2021 to date, unemployment has increased from 30.8% to 34.9%. In 2019, you said to us you will create 275,000 additional direct jobs every year. When you became president in 2018, unemployment was 26.7%, sitting at 5.9 million people. In 2021 quarter 3, the unemployment rate increased from 34.9%, increasing to 7.6 million people. To put this simply, more than 1.7 million people have lost their jobs since you became president. You have now abandoned your strategy of summits and thumb-sucked job creation figures and told us that the private sector must create jobs. You do this because you are running from absolute failure to create employment. The suggestion that the private sector must lead to job creation is a neoliberal policy born out of consensus reached by the G7 when they summoned you to take pictures with them like a child. You have now returned here, conspired with a racist official opposition to force down capitalist understanding of development that sidelines a democratically elected government. The state must be at the center of job creation, and any compromise on that is an attempt to turn this country into a PTY LTD. The state of security in this country is beyond embarrassing, and you have done nothing to give an impression that our people are safe under your leadership. You took the whole intelligence into your office and appointed the most unintelligent person to head the intelligence. He always liked posturing and giving an impression that he's an ideologue. He came here before me. You saw him, Honorable Mbuisen. He was like this. There is a difference between idea and facts. Let me tell you, like he's going to say something abstract and says nothing. That's him. He's like that. And that's how he finishes the president all the time in the office. You see, Mr. President, nothing. You have passed a motion of no confidence on a young person in a form of Zizigodo. That is the young person that you should be grooming, who should be correcting that institution of the intelligence and make it functional. I do not understand this thing, Honorable Deputy President. Your hatred for your young people is visible. You hate young people with passion, and a young person with potential gets to be destroyed in your organization. What is wrong with giving Zizi the full responsibility of being a minister of intelligence and allow this minister who came before me to accompany his friends on the trips and leave the intelligence to young people? Now, there are thugs today going around calling themselves Operation Dudula, who are harassing innocent people, demanding proof of citizenship. Nothing is happening to them. These armed individuals operate freely because they know this country is run by cowards. They call themselves Operation Dudula. They put guns, they display guns openly on the streets of South Africa in front of the police. Yet police do not act against those thugs that intimidate our people. There was a video circulating of an African old lady who was crying, being forced to take out her ID by these thugs. Yet government can't do anything against these criminals. Violent crime is at all-time high. That is the mistake you did. Honorable Begitele was not supposed to be a minister of police because he was a commissioner of police. There is no way he can be a minister of police and not compete with the commissioner of police, because he knows that responsibility and he knows what you can do with that responsibility. It was a miscalculated move. If anything, you should have taken Ndozi to the army and give someone different, the police, who will not compete with the commissioner of police. We will never defeat crime in this country for as long as the competition in the police is not stopped. And the only way to stop that competition is to remove Minister of Police and send him somewhere else so that we can fight crime. Crime in this country, cash in transit haste, is at a high level, not because it cannot be fought. There is one December where Minister Begitele fought criminals to a point where there was zero in December. There was zero cash in transit haste. We can't say the same today, caused by this unnecessary competition we have. And what is even worse is that you've got police and the soldiers committing cash in transit haste, which is a very clear state of a rotten security cluster we have in this country. Speaker, we are making a clarion call that there must be a clear change in the security cluster. Otherwise, our women and children will never be safe in this country. We want our people to reclaim the streets, and we need to fight crime decisively. A person is just called John Wick and then he goes around Mamelodi killing people with ease, and government can't do anything because of competition between a minister and a police commissioner. We want to say to the president, if you want to pass a motion of no confidence in your ministers, stop using your friends by appointing them into positions in your office. You are appointing your friends to come and play the role that must be played by your ministers. What is the point in appointing a a person to come and cut red tape? The red tape is a responsibility of Treasury. When people were looting and stealing money of PPE, you called Treasury to issue regulations. Treasury issued regulations and that nonsense stopped immediately. Treasury has got capacity to deal with the issues of red tape because they are the ones who issue these red tapes, who say you must follow the following things before you pay a small business. Now you come and appoint a guy from outside. The government is very hostile, if you don't know, Mr. President. They are not going to cooperate with that person because he's going to be seen as an outsider. You need Treasury to cut the red tape. We need to remove the Department of Small Business because it's not adding any value. If anything, these red tapes that affect small business, it was supposed to be the Department of Small Business that intervenes on behalf of small business and make sure that they survive. But now you have gone to fetch one of your own to come and play a role of a minister. You have now called another one to come and play a role of Minister of Environment. If a person must go around convincing people on our environmental policy and seeking funding, what is the role of a Minister of Environmental Affairs? Why are you not removing these ministers that you are passing motions of no confidence on and replace them with your friends, because that's what you want to do? If you think that these friends that you are appointing in the presidency, they are so smart and better than your own ministers, why are you not appointing them and costing us more money? Because these people are not going to perform this job freely. You are costing us a lot of money. You have ballooned the presidency unnecessary to take care of your own friends. So we are saying the Department of Small Business must be closed, because small business must be part of all the departments. Why should a small business be a department? In every department, you've got a responsibility to make sure that you empower small business. Every year, you come here without fail to come and tell us about how cheap your suit is and how cheap your shoes are. What unnecessary utterances, trying to demonstrate to us that you are buying South African. Why are you not telling us how much and what percentage of your budget are you spending on buying local as government? Because the government is the biggest buyer in South Africa. If you can buy local as government and spend the budget local, you will have empowered a lot of people. Not this individual demonstration of cheap arrangement is not going to help anything. What is going to help is to say to government, you are going to buy local. Why is Matache prison buying food in Polokwane and not buying food in Thohoyandou in Venda and empowering the farmers there in Venda who are going to be the suppliers of that Matache prison? Why are the people who are supplying food for kids, feeding scheme in Khayelitsha, not buying local from Khayelitsha as a policy that nothing is going to come outside Khayelitsha? That requires decisive leadership, which you are not known for. We are asking you, when you come to respond here, please withdraw that thing that you are not going to create jobs. You have killed the hopes of a lot of young people with that statement. You have destroyed them. These people who are looking for government to come and rescue them out of poverty, you stood here and told them it will never happen. They rely on you, they trusted you, you came here and destroyed the hopes of the hopeless masses of our people. Shame on you, Mr. President. You have destroyed young people of South Africa. You have destroyed
Honorable Malema, your time has expired.
Let's remove this ANC from power.
Honorable Member, thank you.